Welcome to the Our City Church podcast. Whether it's your first time listening or you're a weekly listener, we hope this message impacts your life, your relationship with God, and your relationship with others. Here's Pastor Chris.
All right, happy Easter, Our City. Great to see everybody. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. I want to take a minute and welcome everyone who's watching online right now, or maybe you had to catch it on the podcast. We are so grateful to have you here today. Special shout out to some of my golf friends who are going to see me in a different light today. So I want you to know I talk a little different here than I might after a bad shot. I should admit that to you today, to be authentic. Hey, if you're here and you're new or you're just checking us out, we're so glad to have you. My name's Chris. I'm the lead pastor here at Our City Church. And I'm just so honored that you guys came in and that you're hanging out with us for Easter. Happy Easter. It's our first Easter in our new space here. We're really happy to be here. That's excellent. If you have a Bible, I'd like to invite you to open it to John chapter 20. That's what we're going to look at today and look through a couple things that happen around this wonderful day. Resurrection Sunday, this is the day where the Christian message, it believes that darkness doesn't win, right? That death does not win, that what's going wrong doesn't win, that the brokenness of our world doesn't have the last say, that we are people of faith in the resurrection. We are the people of the resurrection, that we believe there is life after death, that we believe there is life even in the midst of death and sorrow and pain and disappointment and all the setbacks that you, your family, your children, your grandchildren will ever experience, that because Jesus conquered death, we, through him, can get through anything that comes our way on earth. And so we are people of that. We at Our City Church, we are a people of hope. We are a people of the life in Jesus because of Easter, and we're excited to celebrate that today. I do want to talk to those of you who are new or maybe kind of wouldn't even maybe consider yourself like a full-fledged like follower of Jesus, or maybe you're not really a Bible reader or like a church goer or whatever. And I really want to talk to you for just a minute and let you know that I'm really glad you're here. And I know it could be a little nerve-wracking to come to church. Maybe you came with a friend or a family member, somebody sent you this link and you're checking it out. I just want to let you know, I know it could feel a little bit like you're going to the principal's office today and you're like, all right, first of all, they're going to tell me all the things wrong with me. They're probably going to jam me up for some money. And like, I just want you to know at Our City Church, you're not going to get told today. No one's going to like smoke you for your bad behavior or whatever. We're going to talk honestly. But we want to encourage you. We want to build you up. We want you to leave feeling better when you walk into our church than you did, when you leave, we want you to feel better when you leave walking out of our church than you did when you walked in, right? I grew up in churches, and I'm sure you did too, where you felt worse about yourself. You left being like, man, I am a piece of crap, right? And we don't want that for you, right? That's not how I pastor. It's not how I preach. It's not how our church feels. And we believe that's not even a true reflection of the heart of Jesus. And so we want you to capture a little bit about how Jesus looks at you today. And we hope to do that. And I should tell you this. You don't have to believe what we believe to belong around here or to be a part of our community or to experience our Jesus. I'm a Bible guy and I'm a Jesus guy, but I was not always that way. I didn't always believe what I believe. I used to not believe in the Jesus that I do now or believe in following the wisdom of the Bible. And so I know what it's like to journey through my own spiritual experience. And so we are sensitive to that. We built this church to include people on that road. And so we want you to know that you are so welcome here. You are thought of here. And we're glad that you came to hang out with us and are hanging with us for the day. Before I jump into the message, I want to kind of help us like get around the subject by I want you to think of maybe like a favorite restaurant that you go to, but you love the restaurant a lot. The food's amazing, but really what you love is that you have your own personal waiter or waitress that is like your waiter or waitress, right? When you make reservations or when you go there, you're really hoping she is working or he is working. You're like, oh man, we really want them, right? You'll even, if some of you are like told by the hostess, sorry, their section is full, you'll go, how long until a table opens up? They're like, it's gonna be like 10 minutes. You'll literally wait 10 minutes to get your favorite waiter or waitress. Am I talking to anybody? Anybody have something like that where it's like, your favorite barista, right? Like if you're waiting in line at the coffee shop and the barista who's like making the coffee is like making the other person's coffee, you're like, go ahead, you go first because I'm every other. I want there to make my drink, right? Like you mathematically figure it out. And so this is something that we all kind of have or do or that we experience in our life. And we love going there. We love that waiter. We know about that waiter's life. We know the waitress's story. party. We might check in, house things. We know about the kids. We know about the grandkids maybe. We know about the husband or the wife with them. And they know about you, and they know your drink, right? They bring your drink before you order it. I mean, it's just like such a great personalized experience. You even tip them good. You love like them. You want to make sure you're generous, and it's all good. And when you leave that restaurant, that place, that experience where this real genuine, authentic relationship exists, when you leave, that person whom you do care about and have this relationship with that's real, that person doesn't go with you into your real life though, do they? It's not like they like vacation with you. Right? Like you don't take them with you and be like, hey, just so you know, we're going to the snow. And right? They're not coming to your 40th birthday party, right? They're not at your kids' graduations, right? You don't watch like stuff, like they're not in your life. They are a part of your life, but they're not in your life, right? Like you didn't put them in your will. They're not like, oh, and don't forget, I really love this waitress. Let's leave her $100,000. Like you're not doing that. Right? You're not. And it's not bad that you're not. It's just kind of a thing that you're not. Can you imagine though? Like if with this restaurant that you love so much, what if like the place you love to go to, the food you love to eat, the people you love, and especially your favorite server there, what if one time you took a couple of friends and things got a little out of control? I don't know. Maybe like some of your friends had too much to drink. Maybe they fought a couple people, threw a few chairs through the windows. Now, some of you right now, you're not having to imagine what that's like because you've had a few rowdy ones out there, right? You've been like, dude, what? I didn't know this pastor preached about real life stuff. Oh, yeah, right? Maybe you squabbled with a few people or your friends got belligerent or crazy, or maybe you were the one, or someone who you know well. And so obviously probably not you ever, but probably some of you. And also, what if you didn't pay the bill? You just forgot and just dipped, right? And all of a sudden there was a reason. All of a sudden there was a reason why you maybe just couldn't go back or felt like weird going back or you weren't accepted back. The next time you went back, they're like, yo, you got to pay. You got to say sorry. You were super rude. You're like, dude, I'm so sorry. And they just kind of let you not come back, right? That would be a bummer. You'd be so disappointed, especially if it was a place you really loved. And this is what's interesting about this whole idea is this can happen when it comes to a ton of different things with people we care about and all the rest, but it can also happen when it comes to our own idea about what it means to have a faith experience or a relationship with God, where God almost can become like the favorite server that we really do appreciate and we really enjoy and we really like. And there's so much about the personality of Jesus and the leadership of Jesus, even the teachings of Jesus that we're just like so amazing. I mean, how can you not love the dude? He's so great. There's like nothing you could really even say negatively about him. And you get the things that you need when you need it, but it can become, for people that are in this room and watching online, that you would say you are a believer in Jesus, right? For us, and even for those of us that are like kind of like figuring that out, our faith experience can become one of these things where it's kind of like we experience God or Jesus kind of at like the place that we go to from time to time, right? But then once we're done, we go back to our normal life. That doesn't really include the server. The server's not really in our decision making. They don't come to birthday parties. They're not at Christmas. They're not at Thanksgiving. We don't send them cards. They're not with us. We're not really doing a relationship that's personal. It's practical. It's a part of where I go. And the challenge with that becomes is that when we make that the way we also do our faith with Jesus or our practice or a relationship with Jesus, we miss out on so much of what Jesus has a heart to give you. And it can be because maybe for some of you, you feel that you've messed it up too much. Maybe you messed up the whole relationship. Maybe you got too drunk and hammered with your friends, right? Maybe you did some stuff you regret. Maybe you feel ashamed or embarrassed because of mistakes you've made. And so you kind of feel like, you know what? Like I don't belong in church. Some of you today might have been worried that the place would burn down because you walked in today. I want you to know we have really good fire insurance on the building. You're fine. We'll be just fine. Right, but for real, like seriously, like we all have these things that make us feel like, here's why God probably doesn't want to be around me today. God's not too high on me. I've done so much wrong that I'm ashamed of, that I'm embarrassed of, or that I just don't quite get it going. And maybe also it could be because it's like, well, if you were really honest, you'd say, yeah, I kind of just like check into God when I kind of need my favorite meal, or I need my little prayer answered, or I'm having a crisis in my marriage, or my kid's real sick, or this business transaction could totally change the future of my life. So that's when I kind of go and I'll tip God with my time and my energy and my presence and being cool and great. And then once I get the meal and I get the thing I needed, I'm like, all right, God, kick rocks. I'm out to go live the rest of my life, right? And it's not because you don't really appreciate it, but maybe it's because you think he don't really want to be in my family. He don't want a vacation with me. He don't want to be in my world because I'm a mess, and God shouldn't be around a mess. And if you've ever felt like that, and I have, I want you today to really lean in and open your heart, because I would like to present to you what Jesus had to say to some of the very same people who royally failed him, that were actually in the story. Even if you're a loose Bible reader, you've been to church a few times, you probably heard a few of the names I'm going to go over today. And I want to zoom in the camera of the Bible on a few things in our lives today and say, Jesus, how do you feel about people who kind of just leave you where you were, leave you where it was, and kind of go do their own thing? How do you feel about people who royally make massive mistakes? Is it what some of us grew up in a Christian or Catholic experience or a religious home or whatever? Is God just stay out the house, don't come home? How dare you? How dare you disrespect who I am? Some of us don't know it. Maybe you've never consciously thought about it, but that might be why you have this waiter-waitress relationship with God that you plug in when you need it, but then it's really impersonal after that. What if there is so much more that Jesus has for you than that, if you could change the way you think he sees you? And to that, I want to look into this story and look at John chapter 20, verse 1. Real quick, for John chapter 20, everybody say there and then. If you're new around here or watching online, every week we talk and we preach and share messages from the Bible. We talk about the Bible from a perspective that for my whole entire preaching life, I have called there and then. What does it mean? It means I want you to know what was happening in the story of the Bible there and then where it was written. I want you to know the customs and the ideas and the cultures and the rules and the society it lived in. Because if you don't understand the world of the Bible, then the words of the Bible will never make sense in 2023, California, America, wherever you're watching. So we need to know what was happening there and then. So there and then, here's what's going on in the story of the Bible. Jesus has told his disciples he's going to die and he's going to rise from the dead, but he's told it to them in kind of story format. So they kind of knew it, but didn't really quite understand the story. And so he has prophesied and predicted his own death. And he said he was dying so that his perfect life could cover the imperfect lives that we would all live. And he loved us so much, he was going to do that because he would rather leave heaven and come to earth than to spend the rest of heaven, eternity, without us. So he wanted to make a way for us to all have hope and purpose on earth and life after earth. And so Jesus comes, and he is in this moment, before we get to John 20, he has been tried in an illegal court by religious leaders who were mad at him because he's letting other people who shouldn't be allowed to know God to be open to knowing God. He talks to Gentiles, he talks to sinners, he's talked to prostitutes. Tax collectors were super hated because they robbed people financially. He is including all these people in his tribe, in his journey, in his kingdom work, in his whole community. And there's religious leaders that don't like that. And so all of a sudden he's being tried and he's been convicted to die by crucifixion. He's been whipped. He has had his back whipped open, 39 lashings on his back. They have beat him. They've ripped out his beard. They put a crown of thorns. They twisted a thorn crown and stuffed thorns onto his forehead. So he's bleeding down his face. They've whipped him. He's carried across to the point where he couldn't carry it anymore. And a guy named Simon the Cyrene picks it up and takes him to a place called Golgotha, which means the skull, which is where the Romans would crucify criminals. Jesus is crucified. Now, to be crucified, if you don't know what a crucifixion actually is, they put this cross on the ground and they take the criminals, which are there with only a loincloth around their midsection and back, which back then would have been extremely shameful, embarrassing. Imagine if you were ever stripped naked and that was put on the internet or publicly for everyone to see. Like, it's probably not even as embarrassing now as the loincloth would have been because they were so covered. We are not a very covered people anymore. And back then they were. So it was like embarrassing, shameful, just that. Not to mention the brutal physical beating and the fact that all of Jesus' closest friends ditched him and acted like they didn't know him. So this dude's going through emotional separation and rejection from friends. So if you've ever felt that, Jesus has felt that. He's being physically treated inappropriately. If you've ever been on the end of that, he knows what that's like. He's being blamed for stuff he did not do. He's innocent of the crimes he's being convicted of. If you've ever been accused of stuff in a relationship or people blame you for things that are their problem, then Jesus knows what that feels like too. Now he's being tortured. And when they crucified him, the only way to get the arms where they would put the nails in the hands was they had to take a rope while the cross was down, and they would take the rope around the arm and they would put their foot on the head of the cross that was at the top of the cross, and they would pull each shoulder out of socket and dislocate the shoulder of both criminals to get the nails to be able to go into the slot of the cross. So it would cause them to sag and they would drown in the fluid in their lungs. It was intentional because they could have used the guillotine, but that's an immediate death. They wanted the whole public to see absolute agony of people who were they were being drowned in their own blood and liquid in their chest. And so Jesus was on this cross for hours, and that's how the criminals would die. While this has happened, then he is killed and he's taken down the cross. And then there's two people, Joseph of Arimathea and a man named Nicodemus. And they take him down from the cross and put him in Joseph's personal family tomb. And the Roman soldiers put this massive rock that like 5 of them had to move to get in front of it. So they can make sure, because people were like, oh, the disciples are going to come and steal his body and say that he really did rise from the dead. So that's what's going on. Now, it's interesting, and I'll come back to this in a minute. And especially if you're a female, I want you to really lean into this. It was 2 dudes who took him down, carried his body, put him in a tomb, and then would have prepared the burial of his body so it would be preserved, because that's what they would have done back then. With that said, now I want to go to John chapter 20. It's been 3 days since those 2 guys put him in that tomb. Jesus has been dead. And this is what the Bible says. John records that happened. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. Who's Mary Magdalene, Pastor Chris? Mary Magdalene is one of Jesus's disciples. She's not one of the 12, but she is one of his disciples and followers. But she's also got a real sketchy past. She's a prostitute, a former prostitute. And so this is a woman who has known many lovers. This is a woman who has been the scourge of society. This is a woman that everyone kind of is like, I can't believe that Jesus lets her hang out, right? That's the whole deal with her. She's the first one to the tomb where Jesus's body was laid, which is an interesting thing I'll get to in a second. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. Well, she knew I don't know how this happened yet, but something's going on. And there's some sketchy business that's happening. Now, I do want to say to you, if you are a person who's looking for some credible reasons to put your faith in Jesus, which, by the way, putting your faith in Jesus is just that, faith in Jesus. I cannot physically prove to you that Jesus rose from the dead. However, I will promise you, if you spend 6 months researching the evidence about Jesus rising from the dead, it would require more faith to not believe the evidence than to believe it. I know that because I did that. And that's how I eventually came. And there's a few things that made me really come to it. One of them is this part of it right here. If you were to do what a lot of people say got done back then, right? Because you can't deny Jesus lived. He lived. It's in history books. If you don't think Jesus lived, you don't think, Julius Caesar lived either, okay? You just want to be in this new pretend world where there's no such thing as anything and you make up your new rules and whatever. If you want to do that. God bless you. You're always welcome here. But just know that you're not going to really be ever satisfied by anything that's truthful. Here's what I would tell you. What I realized was if it was really going to be a lie, who the heck? That was if you were smart enough to trick the world for a couple thousand years, you don't think that the way you would have got in the room together, all right, we're going to steal the body. He's going to stay dead. All right, cool. We're going to get the stone away and get the body out. Okay, we got that. We can cover it. We'll pay off the Roman soldiers. Cool, great. All right. Who's the most respectable of all of us right now? Because whoever that is, that's who we need to send to the tomb to spread the news. Oh, I know. The former prostitute. The woman who's not even a legal citizen. The woman who's not even able to be viewed. She can't testify in court. the women were still viewed as property. They weren't equal status citizens. You would not have started that lie like that. And that was where, for me, I began to go, dang it. Because I didn't want to believe that Jesus was real or that he was God. But it began with that little bit. I placed that before you. Not really a big part of my notes, but for whoever wants to hear that, hear that. And this is what she did. Verse 2. This is interesting. Very, very, very interesting. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. I want to pause there real quick. Okay. The dude who's writing this, his name is John. He was one of Jesus's followers. He knew Peter. He followed Jesus just as long for 3 years that Peter did. Now, it's interesting because back then when you would write a story or you were writing down the history of what you saw happen, which is what John was doing, you would not, if you were in the story, you would not use like the personal phrase like, I was there and then Jesus said to me. You wouldn't do that. You would find a nickname for yourself and use it every time in your writing. So all throughout the Gospel of John, where he writes and he has to include a part of the Jesus narrative where he's included, he always refers to himself as the one whom Jesus loved. Now, I really hope he wrote that after John died or after Peter died, because you got to imagine if you're Peter and you read this gospel, you're like, you probably would hit him up real quick, be like, hey, yo, I just read your gospel. What's that? The one who Jesus loved? Fool, he loved me too. What you talking about? I got a question real quick. Did you walk on water with him? I didn't think so, John. Where you at? That's how I would have handled it. And so you got this real normal thing. I want you to see it. Here's why. Some of you have like an overly broken understanding of the spiritual way you see the narrative of Jesus, which is why you have a broken way of how you think God sees you. You think the people in this story are like these pristine followers of Jesus in a crystal glass to be admired in a museum. Like the way their faith worked out was just so marvelous and so faith-filled and never broken or faithless, never petty, never juvenile, never jealous, never insecure. They're never angry. They never competed about stuff that doesn't matter. You know, the stuff that you and I do all the time, the stuff that makes us feel stupid about ourselves. And when we think about like, gosh, God, what the heck are you going to do with I'm such a mess. I got so many. We sometimes don't see how the people in the story of the resurrection of Jesus, they're just like us. And watch it, I'll prove it to you. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, you know, the one that Jesus really loves, and she said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they've put him. So she's like, look, scandal, alert, someone fake news or whatever news. I don't know what's going on, but dude, they took that stone and he ain't there and we got to figure out what's going on. Okay, now watch verse 3, very, very important here. So Peter and the other disciple, you know, the one Jesus really loves, started for the tomb. Now, I want to pause right there and leave that verse up there. You would think, listen to me. You would think, if you're online watching this, you're with your family, lean in. If you're a teenager, lean into this. You would think, if you were chosen by Jesus of all the history of time to live your life, if you lived with not a pastor or an evangelist or some priest or Mother Teresa's day or in the day of great faith or whatever, like, no, you lived with the Jesus. That was your life. You were around. Now leave verse 3 up there for me. Sorry. I'm going to talk, but yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It makes me feel like it's a blanket. It's a comfort to me that I know it's there and I won't forget what I'm saying. Because every now and then I forget what I'm saying and I have to go, what am I saying? And then if it's up there and it just says Happy Easter, I go, well, that's really general. It's not helping me. My problem, not yours, by the way. What was I saying? Dang it, I knew that was going to happen. Help me. Come on. You were saying, if I what? Oh yeah, you were living at the time of Jesus. Hey, it's harder than it looks, people, okay? So this is harder than you think it is. All right, so Jesus is like, John's living with Jesus. He's recording the story of the Son of the living God who came to earth, answered thousands of years of prophecies with his life, prophesied he was going to die and rise from the dead, pulls it off. John is writing the story of all of that. And in the middle of this story, of all the details, of all the important facts, you think John would want to make sure that everybody knew. He had to make sure you knew about certain details so you knew that Jesus included you no matter what you did. You were included. You'd think there was got to be some holy, spiritual, sacred, deep, rich, meaningful, layered truth here that just he had to tell you. But verse 3 says, so Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Verse 4, both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Wait, what? Why is that a detail, John? John, what are we doing? What are we talking about? So not only, John wants to make sure, okay? So if you've ever felt like you were too messed up for God, I just want to point you to this. John is writing the Bible, and he wants to make sure that you know that not only does Jesus love him more, but he runs faster than Peter. I mean, this is so rich. It's so good. And it's why I love the Bible story of Jesus, because it was written thousands of years ago and he lived it out thousands of years ago, but it still talks to me today. It tells me about stuff in my own heart, the petty, small, insignificant fights that I let myself get into, the things I want to argue and battle about when we're literally on the cusp of the most amazing event in the history of mankind. And I care more about whether or not Peter runs faster and everybody knows it, that he doesn't. Peter's a legend in Christian faith and history. And part of the reason he's a legend is he does walk on water with Jesus. Another reason why is because right before Jesus is arrested, he tells Jesus, I'll stick with you through it all. I don't care what they do to you. And Jesus goes, that's not really true. He goes, nah, dude, hey, for real, I'm your boy. Ride or die, Jesus, get at me. And Jesus goes, actually, before the alarm clock goes off tomorrow morning, you're going to tell 3 people you don't even know me. He's like, nah, come on, man. I'd never do you like that, Jesus. I'm your dog, man. Thick and thin. I'm going to ride with you, Jesus. And next thing you know, Jesus is getting his sentence handed down. They're beating him, and the crowd is going nuts. And 3 different people in the crowd kind of spot Peter, like, hung out, like, trying to look around, like, what's up? And they're like, hey, don't you know Jesus? And he's like, nah, I don't know the man. Please believe. They're beating him up. I don't want some of that, right? All the way down to like a teenage girl's like, I recognize you. You used to hang with Jesus. And he cusses this teenage girl out. Woman, I told you. Girl, I told you. And he's cussing. The Bible says he curses this girl out. Okay? And then the rooster crowed. And the morning started. And Jesus is led away to be crucified. Okay. Just to get us into the story a little bit, can you imagine think about your best friend. Okay, your best friend. You're ride or die. Like, this is the person that, like, thick and thin, you tell each other secrets, you're there for each other, you've been there for each other. Maybe it's an actual sibling, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's like, dude, that's the person that, like, is there for me. You keep each other's secrets, you got each other's back, and it's like, it's for life, right? Can you imagine if you found out that person was sick and in the hospital and dying, and you just, like, never went to see him? Or what if they never came to see you and it was you, or your child or your husband or someone was sick and dying, and they never called you, never texted you, never came to see you? How would you feel about that relationship? How would your heart feel? How would that go for you? Because that's what Jesus experienced from not just Peter, but from all of them. But Peter was royally, because he was like, ride or die, Jesus, hashtag homies for life, right? Like, he's the one that's going to be down, and he's not. That's what Jesus endured. And this is incredible, because after Jesus dies, he rises from the dead, but and he doesn't reveal himself to everybody. He has seen a few of the disciples, not all of them. And now I want to catch you up on the next couple days after he is risen from the dead, and he goes out to where these guys are. Watch this. John chapter 21, verse 1. It says this: afterward, Jesus again appeared to some of his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. And this is how it happened. Watch this. Simon Peter, the denier guy, okay, the one like, right? Thomas, who was known as Doubting Thomas. You might have heard of him before. Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, which is James and John. John, the one whom Jesus loves, and 2 other disciples were together, but not all 12. If you did the math, that's not all of them. That's just some of them, which is interesting because the disciples aren't all together anymore. And that's what happens sometimes when crisis hits, right? Have you ever seen how the family breaks apart when one of the important people in the family passes, right? Like mom passes, dad passes, and siblings fight over the money. They fight over how the funeral was arranged. They fight over stuff that really doesn't matter, and you mess up a whole lifetime of relationships because of petty stuff. And that's why I think this thing of the resurrection speaks to what's really going on. He's got broken relationships. People don't want to hang out anymore. They're not sticking together. And then Simon tells the ones that are there, I'm going out to fish, verse 3. I'm going out to fish, he told them. And they said, all right, we'll go with you. So they went out and got in the boat. But that night, they caught nothing. For those of you that may not remember, I want to remind you, and I want to ask those of you that might, do you remember what Peter was doing before he met Jesus and how Jesus called him to follow him? He was a fisher. He was a full-time fisher. He's a master fisher. And Jesus said to him, come and follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men. I will make you someone who impacts lives. I will give your life purpose and meaning beyond what this job is that you're great at. But I will make you so purpose-filled. You'll keep the skills the same way you knew how to work hard and fish, but we're going to fish for something more important. It's the heart and soul of people on the earth who don't know that Jesus loves them. We're going to help them know they're included in God's plan and purpose and grace for them no matter what. And so that's what's interesting to me, is that Peter goes backwards after he fails Jesus. Does that resonate with anyone else out there? That after you've committed to Jesus, but you make some mistakes, that it's easy for you to get drawn back into the quiet, alone, isolated, by myself, feeling embarrassed for what I did, but covering that with a bunch of frustration and anger about what no one understands either. And having this way of life that we just disconnect from the community that Jesus wants us to be. And that's what Peter's doing. And it's what we do sometimes. And it's right here in the story of the resurrection. And this is why I love Jesus. This is why he's the savior of my life. It's because of how he handles this, is how he wants us to hear it. And he goes early in the morning, it says, verse 4, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus, okay? So this is kind of funny to me because they don't even realize it. It says in verse 5, he called out to them, friends, you guys got any fish? Now, I just got to ask real quick. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever had somebody come on your job site and tell you how to do your job, and they're not as good as doing the job as you are? You ever had somebody give you unsolicited advice at parenting? You ever been at the park and your kid, whatever, and some other mom? How about this? Some non-mom? She ain't got kids and she telling you how to mom? She's like, oh yeah, I totally understand because I have a dog. Oh, do you? Yeah, and I mean, just like you love your kids, I love my dog. I care for my dog the same way. Yeah. Let me help you understand how that's not the same. Since you don't have a child, so you don't understand. I always help a parent if they want to know. I'm here to help. And if anyone has ever said to me, and maybe this has happened, maybe not, I always go like this. I just want you to know, it's not the same. Because if at any time, my daughter, Eliana, she's 7, if at any time the dog that we own bit my daughter in the neck and caused her massive damage or anything like that, harmed my daughter, I would not for a second hesitate to put that dog down same day, night. You don't get to touch my daughter like that. Sorry. No, bye-bye. And let me now tell you this. If for any reason my daughter bit the dog in the neck, I would not be putting my daughter down that day. There's the difference. Jesus is on the shore giving advice to master fishermen, and he ain't no fisher. Can you imagine that? But this is what I love about it, is that they actually did something inside of them, didn't understand quite who he was, couldn't recognize him, but they did what he said. And for some of you, that might be where it starts for you. You don't understand it all. You don't quite recognize everything about Jesus. You don't know everything about the story of Jesus. You're not well-versed in all the Bible. But just starting to do the one thing he does ask you to do can open up a whole different life for you. Because here's what's cool about Jesus, is it says that he said, throw your nets on the right side of the boat and you will find some fish. And when they did it, they were unable to haul the net in because so many fish were in their nets. I want you to be reminded that Jesus will bless you even in spite of your past. Even if you have made mistakes, messed up your relationship with God, he still will bless you when you obey him. Because they would have kept their fish nets empty if they would have said, man, we ain't listen. But something in them said, I'm going to obey what he says. And Jesus will bless you every time you obey, even if you're living in a season of disobedience. One step of obedience will open up God's blessing every single time. Be reminded of that he wants to bless you even when you're obeying him once versus 999 times of not. God is a God of redemption. And he says to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask because by then they knew it was the Lord. Jesus, he came, he took the bread and he gave it to them and he did the same with the fish. Here's what I want you to think about. Jesus asks these men who have failed him to come to breakfast. Remember the friend that never came to see you never called you about how things were going in your life? Do you go to breakfast with them because you want to make the relationship right? No, you don't. And that's why we need a Savior who's better than us, who's stronger than us, who's more forgiving than us, who's more redemptive and restorative than us. It's what Jesus wants you to know about you also, that even though Peter made all these mistakes, he still says, Peter, come sit down. I want to have breakfast with you. And he asks Peter a question 3 times. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Why did he ask Peter 3 times if he loved him? Because 3 times Peter had denied him. And he wants Peter to know what he wants you to know. For every mistake you make, I will restore back our relationship. And I want to know, do you love me? Why? Because Jesus is more interested in if you love him in your heart than if your actions were wrong because you were afraid, or because you were insecure, or because you're quick-tempered, or because you're lonely, or because you're jealous, or because you're struggling with lust, or because you're struggling with sadness or depression. And when he asked them, do you have any fish? You know what he was asking them? How's it going doing it yourself? How do you like the results of you doing it on your own? And I'd ask you the same question. How's it going you dealing with your sadness, your depression by yourself? How is it going you against the world? How is it going you dealing with your propensities and the things that challenge you? Not even the things that Jesus says is probably not best for you, but the things you would say are not best for you, right? And by the way, when Jesus says don't do something, it's the same reason I tell my daughter not to run in the street, not stick a fork inside of an electric outlet. It's not because I don't love her, it's because I do love her. And I don't want her hurt. When God tells you not to do something, it isn't because he don't love you. It's because he adores you and wants you safe from pain in your heart and soul. So he says, don't do those things. Those things will hurt you. He loves you. And I want to pause for a moment. Some of you need to just say that to yourself out loud. It's been a long time since you believed what I'm telling you. You think he's mad and angry and he wants to just get you even, get back at you. But he loves you. He invites you to breakfast even though you just acted like you didn't know him. So for a quick second, I'm going to pause my sermon before I end in prayer. And I just want you to say to yourself, Jesus loves me so much. Ready? Say it. If you're watching online, say it. I don't care if you got kids sitting around you. Don't be embarrassed to be like the dad or the mom. I want you to say it again. Say that out loud with me. Say it. Ready? Jesus loves me so much. So much. You are so important to him. He adores you. He loves you. He gave his life for you. He wants relationship with you. And he wants to take it beyond just you coming and checking in every now and then and getting the one little meal you want. He says, no, I want to be in your family. I want you to be in mine. I want to do life together. What would it look like for you to do that, to believe that? Because if you're a parent, can you imagine telling your 14-year-old, don't you come home tonight? Why? Because you talked mean to me before I dropped you off at school today. Because you were rude. Now, I know some of y'all want to say that to your kid. But can you imagine a legitimate parent being like, don't you come home, stay out the house. I don't want you around because you messed up. No good parent would do that. And yet we think that the goodness and greatness of God's great love that's better than your parent love thinks like that about you because you drink too much, because you eat too much, because you cuss too much, because you get angry too much, because you lust too much, because you're too jealous and you gossip too much and you tell too many negative things about other people to make yourself feel better. Because we do broken stuff, because we're competitive and angry at people who win in front of us instead of celebrating those who are doing well. All these things, Jesus says, I know them all about you. Just like I knew everything about Peter, and I still loved him and had purpose for his life. Jesus wants to help you with whatever it is that it looks like for you to take him from being the server in the restaurant you see every now and then to being like, what would it look like for you to have not an impersonal relationship with God, but a very personal, routine, daily, consistent time that you involve him in your life, even if you've been messing up. And I want to invite you to be able to do that. It's as simple as a prayer, really, is to put your trust not in your actions, but in the love of Jesus. And so I want to invite you to do it with every head up and every eye opened. I want to ask you, if you're here today or you're watching online and you would say, you know what? I do kind of have an impersonal relationship with God. And I want to connect more. I want a closer relationship. I want to make it personal. Something I talk to him about every day. And even when I mess up, I don't want to run from him. I want to connect maybe into a community where I'm coming more consistently and being around other people that are trying to do it too. I don't want to disconnect and go back to my old way because I've messed up or I feel sad about how I've been acting. It's like, no, I want to go to the breakfast with Jesus because he invites me to come back close and not to stay away. And if you're in this place today and that's you, and you want to commit or maybe recommit, maybe start over and say, I want to start over. I want to get closer to Jesus again. I want to involve him in a personal way, not this every now and then way. And that's you, and you could feel God's talking in your heart. Would you just raise your hand to Jesus and say, God, I'm listening and I hear you. I know you're talking to me. Anybody else? Yeah. Thank you. I see hands all over. Thank you. 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 Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. When you hear God talk in your heart and you respond, he is so pleased with that. That's the obedience to say, look, I fished all night, but if you ask me to, I'll throw these nets on the other side. You watch. Those of you who are raising your hand, being obedient to his voice, those of you who are raising your hand online, you get ready to watch fish jump in that net. He's going to bless you. I promise you he blesses obedience, even if it's right in front of a ton of disobedience. One action of obedience to Jesus will bless you into a whole new life. And I want to pray that happens in your life. I want to invite you to bow your heads and close your eyes. This won't be a long prayer, but I want it to be significant. And I'm going to ask everyone in the room and online to say it out loud so we all kind of are praying together. But if you're here today and you raise your hand and you want to say this prayer, would you say, Jesus, I come to you today and I thank you that you love me so much. No matter what I've done, no matter how I have failed, you want a personal relationship with me. And today, I want to start that again or for the first time. I believe that you loved me enough to die for me, to cover all my mistakes and my sin, and to get rid of my shame and my guilt and feelings of condemnation. I right now accept your love and your grace to cover my sins. Fill me today with your spirit so I could live for you and develop a personal relationship with you. Thank you that you love me no matter what I do. I give you my life today. In Jesus' name. Come on, church, let's celebrate what God did today on Easter Sunday. What a great day to commit your life to the things of Jesus. Easter, the day we all have access to it today. The last thing I want to ask you to do, if you raise your hand, we spent some money on these welcome boxes to help people who have just began or are re-beginning your faith. This is the deal. We put some really cool things into this box that are going to help you with your new next couple days and weeks. Please don't leave here without getting them. Go into the back. We have a next steps box in person. If you're online, if you just will text in the box right now, like, hey, here's your email. Somebody will tell you how to get a hold of it right now. There's someone in there that will tell you like what link to go to. Go to that link and we'll send you one in the mail for anyone, as many people are in your home. If you're here, I want you to go out there and get one. Don't leave. Even if you're only here and you're going back to wherever you came in from, get one because there's stuff that we put in there we really believe are going to help you walk and live this out. The last thing I would tell you is this, you don't have to join the church, but if you live locally or you can do it online, you don't have to join our church, but I'd love you to join us for the next series because we're going to be talking about how do you get your hopes up? When we were kids, some people used to play like, don't get your hopes up. I'm like, don't get your hopes up. Probably not going to happen, but, and we don't want to do that. We believe that we're living in a time in the life where the world is telling us like, don't have hope. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Everything's wrong in the world, but we are people of the resurrection. We believe death and darkness and brokenness and Rome and Caesar and abusive rulers and dictators and brutality and ugliness and lies. We are people of the resurrection. We don't believe that stuff wins. We don't believe it has the final say. We don't believe that it's more powerful than the truth and the love and the power of Jesus. And we want to get our hopes back up because a lot of us have lost that. And so we're going to talk for the next couple weeks. And if you're here, I'd love you to join us. You don't have to join the church, but just come for the next couple weeks because God wants to instill you with some hope. He wants to inject hope back into your life. And there might be some areas, your marriage, your life, whatever it is that's been going like just harsh. I want to invite you to come back for the next couple weeks and be like, God, put some hope in my heart again. And we're going to do that together as a community. And the last thing I'll tell you, this is the real last thing. I've had like 3 last things, but the real last thing is next week is superhero week for the kids. So get your kids dressed up in some superhero costumes. Come have some fun. And you guys, let's go change the world together. Let's go show them what it looks like to be people who have a personal relationship with Jesus. I love you so much. Happy Easter, our city. Thanks for being here online. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. If you would like to help us impact more people around the world, we would love your support. You can give through the app or online at ourcity.church. And be sure to select the Our City Online tab, which helps us know you're listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can subscribe, share it with your friends, click the share button, or take a screenshot and share it on your social media and tag us at ourcity.church. Thanks again for listening. God bless.